see the path to the championship. I can see it.
Coca-Cola 600 belongs to Ryan Blaney.
Blaney's learned how to win over the last couple of months.
Blaney! Harmon! They spin behind him! It's going to be Blaney!
We're going to win this thing.
Ryan Blaney is going to win his way into the championship for...
You have to run a perfect race to get it.
Ryan Blaney is a NASCAR Cup Series champion!
What an unbelievable year. What an unbelievable playoffs for us.
This is the Team Blaney Podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 131 of the Team Blaney Podcast. My name is Adam Rogers, and alongside me is co-host Steve Mez. This podcast is brought to you by fans for fans. Steve and I have been following the drivers of the Blaney racing family for 2 decades, and Team Blaney itself launched on social media back in 2014. Each weekly episode of the show offers an in-depth analysis of Ryan Blaney's latest NASCAR Cup Series race, plus news, notes, and special guest interviews all throughout the year. This week, we break down Team 12's run in the season-opening Daytona 500 at Daytona International Speedway. Steve, welcome back. It's time to kick off a new season for the NASCAR Cup Series officially. I know we've been on, had some interviews. We talked about the Clash. We did a preview of the season. But now this is what I'll call our first, bread and butter episode of the Team Blaney podcast. So if this is your first time tuning in, this is kind of what we give you week to week all throughout the year with interviews and other special things sprinkled in. And why not kick everything off with the biggest race of the year, the Daytona 500?
Yep. And you planned on going, and what ends up happening?
Oh, man, it was rain. I won't even say rain of biblical proportions, because these weren't like massive downpours. It was just consistent, just regular rain for more than 48 hours. It just never stopped. And it did stop briefly, I guess, because they did get NASCAR Xfinity Series qualifying in on Saturday at one point. But prior to that, and then after that, especially after Xfinity qualifying ended, it did not stop raining until about 10:30 a.m. on Monday morning, just in time for them to postpone the Xfinity Series race one more time to after the Daytona 500. But I tell you what, when those skies cleared in Daytona, Florida, the sun came out, and it did not go away until it went down Sunday night. And they got that track dry super fast, and they're ready for all those festivities. The only thing that was still wet was the infield, which I can tell you from some of our waterlogged shoes from walking around in there during pre-race activities. But it was exciting to be back at the track again, starting a new season. We have a lot to talk about when it comes to Speed Week, and especially how things progressed and how things were delayed. And I'm sure it was kind of weird for a couple of days, not really having too much racing to do when you're so pumped up for everything to kick off this year. But good experience overall, man. I tell you what, the crowd at Daytona, I know it helped that it was a Monday and it was a federal holiday that, not everybody, but a lot of people have off. Huge crowd still showed up to watch this race on a Monday.
Yeah, it's a good deal that that the sun came out really to help dry the track too in the afternoon there. But I was surprised. The crowd looked pretty good size. The best part was the Rock stuck around for Monday, which is pretty awesome. Usually these things, they do a ceremonial thing, on a rain out, they'll do the ceremony or whatever. They'll have them in there. They'll do a press conference thing, and then boom, Monday they're gone, But the fact that he stuck around, they kind of actually did some regular ceremonies on Monday because of it. And he did a nice job yelling to start the engines.
Yeah, and he's all over the place right now. He just has that. He had that TV show on NBC. He's made a huge return. I know there's some crossover here. A huge return to wrestling, where he's a board member now with the WWE and has inserted himself right back into the storyline. So he's big there. He has the US or the UF. What is it now? USFL.
UFL.
UFL, where the two leagues have merged, and that's kicking off now too. So he's been all over the place with that. And then NASCAR, like you said, was awesome. I mean, I've been to somebody actually mentioned it, that this was the third Daytona 500 to be delayed completely to a Monday. And you know who's been in all three of those? This guy. And isn't that kind of amazing? Wow. But you're right. Every single time, most of the time, Pitbull was supposed to do the concert. He couldn't come back, but he's coming back in 2025. DJ Khaled was another person. I can't remember if he was supposed to be the the starter, or if he was supposed to, no, not, I think The Rock was the starter. If he's supposed to drive the pace car or something like that. But, he had to leave. I think the national anthem singer had to leave. So, but The Rock stuck around, and he, like, all weekend was posting about how excited he was going to be, was happy to post that he was staying until Monday, and he's got a ton of reach on social media between everything that he does and being a movie star. So, a lot of the media, I think, on hand was impressed, and he was prepared too. I don't know if he just had great handlers working with him to get him prepared for the questions they were going to ask, but he had some really cool stuff to talk about with Denny Hamlin and wearing the black hat and kind of being the heel, since that's a big part of, the world he grew up in with wrestling too. So that was really cool that, he was up on everything enough to know that, Denny Hamlin's kind of that guy and could maybe give him a little bit of advice. So, so what do you think? I mean, it was an interesting, we have a lot to talk about just because the way the Daytona 500 week progresses, because we have qualifying, we have the duels, plenty to talk about in both of those things. Mm-hmm. And then we have the race itself, and definitely some highs, definitely some lows. But this is the first time in a points race that this new version of Team 12 is put together. And most of that, I'm talking about the new spotter combination with Tim Fedowa and Ryan, a couple new crew members on the road this year. And this was their first kind of test that counts. Points on the line, a victory on the line, and they want to start the season with some good momentum.
Except for what ends up happening to them, everything else they did was actually really good. They did a great job of executing a lot of different things. The team itself did a great job. And then, Spotter, the new spotter, he did a great job too. They were both times when these things happened to them, they were running fourth or fifth and making their move to the front. Now, one happens with about 15 laps to go, and the other one happens with 9 laps to go. So maybe what happened was a little unnecessary as far as what part of the race it was in. But otherwise, they executed a lot of great things, as we're going to find out here.
So let's do it. Let's jump into our recap of the 12 teams run in the season opening Daytona 500, but in Speed Week overall, because so much to talk about.
Yeah, we go back to Wednesday, actually, because they go out and do a single lap qualifying on Wednesday. He goes out 27th. And the Logano actually gets the pole, and the 34 is the other car in the front row. And then the rest of the qualifying just qualifies you for what race you're going to be in, even number and odd number. And so Ryan ends up in duel number 2. So, he's also in that duel with the 2 and the 21. So that's great because you're going to have teammates to race with.
Worth noting that, as you mentioned, the Fords are fast. The Chevys were kind of middle of the road. The Toyotas were nowhere to be found, but it's worth pointing out again that that's normal for them. They don't usually come to Daytona and sit on the pole. So, but they did break up, this Alex Bowman 6 straight Daytona 500 front row starts, and Hendrick Motorsports always getting the pole. And I remember back in the days when it used to be the Roush or the Yates cars, they used to sit on the pole at Daytona up until Hendrick started kind of taking that position. So it was interesting to seeing an all Ford front row. I was I don't know if concerned was the right thing, because I know how the racing works here, but it was just odd that, Joey's up there, the 2 cars up there, McDowell with front row, which worth mentioning again, that they have an alliance with Team Penske now this year. We're all fast in that single car run, but Ryan's kind of back there in 27th. But I wasn't worried because, like you said, if you're not on the front row, this is just setting you up in which duel you're going to be in.
But if we learned anything from last year, qualifying anymore really doesn't matter to Team 12. They're really, really looking at how the car is going to work the rest of the weekend, and definitely with super speedway racing, the ground can be made up, and how good Ryan is at doing it too. So we get to Thursday, duel number 2 here. And Ryan talks about doing the okie dokie on the front row. That's where instead of the pole sitter of the race starting on the inside, he starts on the outside because he has that choice on the initial start of the race. And Tim says to start the race, say smooth and straight. And, 34 drops to the low lane at the start too, to kind of like control that lane. And the top 5 in that low low lane are clear of the high lane as they push in, 4 or 5 laps in. They kind of get lined up a little bit. And but lap 5, he's P10. The Chevys have all kind of bailed to the high lane. But at one point, we've got the 2, the 21, the 14, and the 12, all Fords in the low lane altogether. Right, lap 8 running in that low lane, lap 10. The 24 is leading at this point. At lap 15, the 16 actually takes the lead. And Ryan's all the way back to 18th. Now, this is going to be a recurring theme in the dual races and in the Daytona 500. Ryan doesn't want to lead a lot of laps if he can help it at certain points and times. He wants to conserve fuel because if you come to pit road with 8 other cars, and let's say you're 5th or 6th of those 8 cars come to pit road, but you have to take 1 second less fuel than they do, you could come out in front of all of them when you come back out on the track. So real big for track position here before they even pit to kind of like save some fuel, ride with the pack a little bit. And the front runners are kind of trying to bog down a little bit and do that also. So
we talked about that a lot in our episode last season before recapping their win at Talladega when we had Gasman Chris Conklin on, because that was a big part of their victory there, was saving fuel as much as he possibly could, getting that splash on pit road, and then kind of coming out in a really good position. So we have gone in depth about that, but that was the theme of the weekend. And unfortunately, unless they make some sort of changes, that's going to be how this racing is going forward, but it is what it is.
At lap 17, Ryan goes to the high lane, and the 34, 21, the 2, the 4 are all back there with him. And lap 22, I finally get the in-car camera. NASCAR's having, it's like first night jitters or something. I don't know. It took 20-some laps to get the in-car camera in the second dual race. They had them in the first dual race, no problem. I don't know what the heck they're doing, but we pay extra for this, so that's why I'm going to complain. Not, I understand technical glitch once in a while. At lap 25, the 23 car is leading, and Ryan's back in 16th here. Lap 28, 23 is leading that low lane. The 78's leading the high lane. At lap 30, Ryan says he can tighten it a half a number if they actually have a chance to do something like that. Lap 32, the high lane is moving, is up to 11th. At lap 35, it's still 11th there. And like I said, they're kind of saving fuel here. I got that written down as question mark, but it's not a question mark. They're saving fuel. That's kind of why they're just traveling where they're traveling. At lap 38, the 78 kind of gets sucker holed. They got to get rid of him from the front to the back here. Then Jonathan says the 34 is probably working on a different program than they are, that they're going to go longer. So communication now is about when the pit stop's going to be, who's coming to pit road. They did not quite do that this weekend, all Fords, all Chevys, all Toyotas like they wanted to. It just kind of depended on fuel mileage more, and it depended on being able to get to pit road. So at lap 41, some of the Chevys and some of the Toyotas pit. At lap 42, the 2 was coming in, but they stayed out. Lap 43, they were pitting. The 21, the 10, the 6 came in with them. Oh, I'm sorry, the 2 actually did come with them at that point. And Jonathan says 3 seconds worth of fuel. So this is where, like I said, he comes in with those guys, but he leaves kind of in front of most of them, which is great. He comes out in front of the 6, the 21, and the 60. And lap 44, as they're starting to come together, he's in that low lane up to 6th, and the 34 is leading. And Jonathan tells them, go ahead and do what you need at this point. So they knew they got enough gas to go ahead and travel and push. We got the 45 passing the 8, and then we get this whole melee here. Like I said, I think there was 12 laps to go, or was it 15 laps to go? I'm 45, lap 45. So that's 15 laps to go, right? It was 60 laps. So, they get this whole melee here with the push by the 24 getting pushed, and they get pushed by the 6. And I'm going to make an opinion here. Popular, unpopular, I don't care. First off, somebody couldn't handle the push. Secondly, why are we pushing in a turn with 15 to go? And third, Ryan had made a move underneath, and he had the lane, he had the momentum, he had made the move. So now all of a sudden, you tried to double block him a couple times. You're the one that's pulling up because of it. You've made a mistake. And now you're trying to pile in front of somebody and hopefully they would push you correctly. And you're hoping for that. So when Ryan does get right rear hooked here, we're going to I'm throwing it all at the 24. They could say that somebody pushed this guy into him. But the reality is he tried to block Ryan to begin with, couldn't do the block, lost momentum, and then tried to park himself in front of other guys, hoping he would get pushed properly, so he didn't lose it. And he lost it. So
Yeah,
I don't care. I don't care that, I don't care what happens on Monday with him either, because we'll get to that one too. But yeah, car control and then doing what you're doing with 15 laps to go in a dual race. Mind you, we're emotional because it affects our guy that we're following. But right away, Tim asks him if he's okay. He says, "I'm fine." He says, "I got to get out of here. The car's on fire." So the main thing that at that point is just getting him out of there. Tim's telling him that it's okay to get out because everything behind him is stopped crashing, because you don't want to try and get out of the car and somebody slides into you either. Yeah, that was it from there.
I will say, I think you're 100% correct on your opinion. There's a few things right. You're right. We are emotional in the moment, and Ryan himself post race, we can talk about this. This too is also very, very upset. But he takes a huge hit. It gets right rear hooked and directly into the wall, and it almost seems like when they make that turn and go towards the wall, it's like a launch coaster. Like he just barrels into it even faster than maybe the way they're traveling, than the right direction. I initially in our Discord chat, typed in, before really seeing the replay, type in, like Brad's first victim, like right there, because Brad's involved in this. Brad does run into the back of the 8 who was off the gas. And I think there's a video replay of, the fire coming out of the 8's, the side of the 8 there from letting off the gas. But that's because the 8's trying not to destroy the 24, who just throws the massive block. And like you said, tries to sit in front of a bunch of guys that are coming full speed. So I can't blame the 20 or the 6 or the 8 for that. It's the 24. It's what Ryan has complained about even last year about guys double blocking, or it wasn't as extreme that what Ryan has said before about guys like, blocking down 3 lanes like he did about Chastain at Phoenix or something like that. This was different. But yeah, the 24 is definitely juking back and forth, realized he couldn't go back down to the low lane because he left that hole for Ryan. And it was an unfortunate situation there with that car, and takes out a primary car that was super fast. This race, it's classic Ryan Blaney, can make it to the front when he needs to, put himself in position in the closing laps. And it's just, I don't want to say taken away, but who knows? Because 15 more laps, anything could have happened. He could have got shuffled out. He could have made some moves, but he just didn't get that opportunity because of this happening at that point in the race when it shouldn't have.
Yeah, the cycle had happened. Everybody had come back together, and when he makes the move underneath Byron and Pat was passing him, got past him, he was like 4th at that point. Which from that point forward, you only got to get around 1 or 2 guys at the right lane, the right time, the right push. So, yeah, just, I have the in-car camera at this point. They keep the in-car camera on, watch them put it on the wrecker, watch them get it all the way back there to the haulers. They take it, they put it next to the 22 hauler, and a bunch of different guys come up underneath and look underneath the hood that's kind of cracked up and taking pictures. I don't know what they're seeing, how the engine crumpled. I think they were worried about that impact, that force, what happens with the engine, does it come back in toward the driver at all? And they take the backup car was actually in the 22 hauler, so they actually you can see that off to the side too from the camera. But they actually go ahead and get that down. It's all black at that point before they put the stickers on it. But yeah, that was kind of weird there to see all that. So they do practice on Friday with the backup car, which was nice. And when they do practice, they run just with the other Fords, 6 or 7 of them at one point. All the Penske's got together, a couple of the other ones got together, the front row guys, because they're that alliance. And they ran, the the times they show you on TV, it's just because they're racing in a pack. So they had a bunch of the guys at the top there with actually I think the Toyotas were at that point, right? In the practice. Or was it
the Toyotas themselves kind of set the next news cycle on fire because they're like, hey, they didn't do well in qualifying, but they are 2 to 3 miles an hour faster than everybody else in practice. So they became the storyline leading into the 500, even all the way up to, I attended the tweet up on what eventually becomes Monday morning. And that's what Bob and that's what Jeff, and they're all kind of talking about. And most of them were predicting, a Toyota to win the race because of the way they were in that practice. So
that practice, and they won the duels. They won both duels too. So, but actually the car shakes out pretty good. And from what, when they do rain out the practice for Saturday, I guess they had interviewed Ryan at some point and he says they weren't going to go out and practice Saturday at all. That the backup car was more than ready to go. And that these cars are almost exactly identical anyway. So we get to Sunday and it rains and they didn't waste too much time. I think they canceled it by about 9 or 10 in the morning.
Yeah, I think it was 9:30 on the dot. And I will say that luckily we made some really great decisions to not drive over to the track on Saturday for the Xfinity race or Sunday. I mean, we're only like about an hour, a little over an hour due west of Daytona. So it wasn't going to be that big of a deal if we had to turn around, but spent 2 full days without racing, just watching the rain, the rain go by. But I'm very thankful for what they did on Sunday. Because we did get up early and we were going to leave, but I saw the radar and I'm like, let's just wait. I don't want to get there and just get wet and be there all day because we've done that plenty of times. But yeah, I think it was 9:30 a.m. Eastern time when all the alerts started going out that they're going to postpone to Monday. And I think that gave a lot of people an opportunity to make travel changes if they could have the next day off and stay. And I even heard some stories, and I think they talked about it on the teardown too, anecdotally, of some people that came to Daytona on Monday that weren't planning on going to the 500 because suddenly tickets were more affordable on because this is one of the most expensive races of the year to go to, more affordable on the secondhand market. And some people booked some quick flights and got down here to watch, what turns out to be a great race overall. And I'm sure a memorable experience for them.
Yeah. So we get to Sunday or Monday now, and Ryan is going to be starting 32nd with the backup car, but stages
wasn't worried. Not even worried a little bit about that. Not even
worried. Stages 65, 130, and 200. 8 sets of tires. A fuel window of 42 to 45. Could be a little longer if we save fuel better. To the rear, the 12, the 8, the 24, the 10, the 31, and the 36, which is the 10s, Gregson and Hemrick in the 31, Gralla in the 36. I got to get used to some new guys with new numbers this year. Pit stall 15 between the 1 and the 51, which is Chastain and Haley. And then we have scanner issues to start the race. It takes NASCAR a while to get.
I was going to say that was the app, right? I did see a lot of chatter on social media that it just the app. Well, what the Clash? What we had the wrong channel. We had to start on somebody else's channel to actually hear Ryan, and then this one you hear nothing, right?
Tuesday we don't have the in car for 20 laps, and now we don't have the scanner for a little while. 22 actually took the outside for the start here. At lap 2, Ryan's in 36. By lap 5, they're 3 wide. The 6 car in that outside lane leading, and Ryan joining the high lane. And then we had a caution at lap 6 for the 21 and the 77, and the 42 probably caused it. The 41, the 84, the 3, the 36, all involved. Looks like the 6 turned. Actually, there was the 6 that turned the 42.
So that one I can't. That one I can put on Brad. That's okay.
Yeah. So this starts a series of events in the first stage. Really, really interesting because they're not sure.
I call it chaotic.
Yeah, not
it
sure
was
what
such a weird stage.
By lap 8, we have the scanner on, and finally, which is good because I need to know what the heck is going to happen here. They're debating on getting fuel, and then they stay out. And I thought, oh, this is great. This gives him a lot of track position. Seems like at the point they're pitting, everybody's going to have to pit one more time in the stage. It'll be a matter of is there another crash, because if there's another crash somewhere along the line, they'll all just pit at that point and he'll gain that track position, the only other two other cars stayed out with him. Was it the 60 and the 2? And I'm sorry, was it the 20 and the 60?
Yes, the 20.
So it was 20. It was 20 and the 60. Yeah. So it was P2. He chose the inside lane, and restart lap 12 here. Everyone will need to pit one more time before the end of the stage, which is funny because at lap 15 they're either first or second. They're racing both lanes. At lap 26, the in-car camera or the in-car audio of the 5, they play it on TV, and they say, "Oh, if we keep running like this, we might be able to make it."
Yeah, because I even think on the radio, I was listening to the MRN broadcast, and they were mentioning, there's chatter throughout the field saying like, is the 12 and the 20 holding this field up because they're trying to save as much as they can out front. Mm-hmm. So they just said like the pace was off big time, which, we needed that to conserve that fuel, but it also could have been beneficial for the rest of the field. And I think that's what you're kind of going to talk about next.
Yeah. What's happening now is that like there was somebody with a single car that was like way back and he was gaining on the pack, which almost never happens. That means that's how slow they were running the pack. And at lap 30, we had lost the scanner. We got the scanner back at lap 30. Jonathan tells them, go harder, make everybody use fuel. So at this point, they realized what was happening, and they're like, let's just push everybody so to make sure everybody's got to at least pit one more time here before the end of the stage here.
That was cool to see because they that turned into like a 6 or 7 car breakaway. Like all of a sudden you could see they just turned the jets on and they flew away, and then the rest of the packs they were forced to catch up, really.
Yeah. The 20, the 12, the 31, the 22, actually, the 4 cars that really start to get it going here. Then at lap 35, those top 5 kind of get single file here. Then we kind of get bundled back up by lap 37, and Ryan's actually covering both lanes. The 22's pushing him. The 2 is up there with them. It's wonderful. We're all back where we should be all together, At lap 38, Tim wants him to go bottom, and the 20's pushing. At lap 40, they pit. Now, he actually gets teammates to come with him. The 2 and the 22 they come with, and there may have been one more car in there. The problem with this is Ryan needs 4 seconds of fuel to make the end of the stage, and these guys need less. So when we leave pit road, we can't wait for anybody, and they can't wait for anybody, and they get ahead of him to a point where they're too far. And Ryan asks, can they like drag a little bit so he can get to them? And they says they're risking stage points. They can't do it because they don't want to risk stage points, which totally in their head, I don't know. Maybe they're thinking they were going to merge in with everybody else at some point, but it's not really working that way. So he's in 32nd at this point, and it was the 2, the 22, the 17, and the 6 actually were that group in front of him. At lap 47, Jonathan tells him the teams, that it should pit by lap 54, and Tim relaying the message says the 4 car in front of him needs to get gas, needs less gas. So, at lap 50, the pack is coming. At lap 51, Ryan joins the pack, but he's 33rd, a lap down, and he's 2 positions behind the lucky dog, which would be the 20 and 31st. And at lap 55, everyone else is starting to pit now. So at lap 57, he's still in 33rd here. At lap 59, the 10, the 38, and the 4 all pit, and they're back, but he's back on the lead lap now because those guys finally pitted. So the 60's leading at this point. By lap 65, the 9 wins the stage. Ryan finishes 32nd. And Ryan says he needs like a number 1 turn if they can do that on this pit stop. Now, I didn't look up all the pit times on the NASCAR app, and the reason I didn't is because there's no need to. Okay, yeah. Because 3 seconds of fuel, 4 seconds of fuel, that's the crew chief counting it down. They're going to execute that perfectly because they're the only guy jumping over the wall. When they do come in on the stage breaks, it's 4 tires and they're waiting on gas. So it doesn't matter. You're going to come out whenever you're going to come out based on it takes you longer to fill your tank than somebody else. There's nothing you can do about it. You've got to pack it as tight as you can so that later on you might only have to take less gas, So I didn't keep track of that. You guys can go ahead and look that up if you want and go crazy on it, but it really doesn't matter if it was a 14-second stop, a 12-second stop. It needed to be a 14-second stop. it was nothing to do with how the tires were changed. Ryan and Jonathan are talking about making a little more clear of the plan here, because that's what happened there. That kind of got jumbled up, and what Jonathan said is it's just too fluid. What they did compared to what other people did, it just kind of changed everything. I think they were hoping a couple more cars would have came with them maybe, or stayed out with them maybe. And then the pitting, the way it went with the pitting, it just didn't, they couldn't save enough gas, obviously, to make that fuel only stop shorter. So
I will say that whole sequence, it was weird because there's points that were cool, like when they stayed out and they're leading the pack, and it's always cool to see Ryan lead, a race at Daytona. He's done it so frequently in his career. So that was like the cool part. But then this whole pit stop, everything starts happening. And, I was frustrated with the teammates because I kind of agreed with, and I know we disagreed just slightly on that. I'm like, I'm watching them come off pit road. He was not that far behind. Like if they just slowed, just even on pit exit, not even when they got to the track, onto the track, I'm like, they could have slowed down slightly to let him catch up after they got past, the line where you're speeding, and everything would have been a little bit better. But in the end, it doesn't matter. None of them got stage points. Even if they did get back together as a full pack there of teammates, they still weren't going to get stage points. So the good thing was the stage ends. He's back on the lead lap, and I think I immediately said to you, like, "All right, a new race starts now," and that's pretty much how things went going forward. I will say this chaos with these pit stops, and it was weird because there's points when like Fords and Chevys are pitting together, and it just seemed like everybody across the board, like you said, it was a fluid situation. Like the strategies just were so all over the place that this was like one of the first Daytona races in a long time that I didn't see like was very regimented, and the manufacturers stuck together and they knew what they were going to do. There was a plan. It just seemed like the first half of the race specifically was really chaotic. And I will say it helped the racing be a little bit more interesting in that first stage, because there was a point, 20 laps in where I was like, this is, a little bit boring. And they weren't like riding around single file like old, boring Daytona races would be, because now they almost never run single file anymore. They're usually at least two because of the fuel saving. But no one was making moves. It wasn't until the strategy plays came in that, there's different packs all over the track, and who's going to catch who's going to be a lap down. Is there going to be a caution that's going to trap some of these guys laps down? Who's going to get the lucky dog? So at least it made that interesting, but there was definitely high points and low points all within one stage at Daytona.
Yeah. They do pit 32nd, come out 28th. So they gained 4 spots on other people taking fuel. They end up 24th for the restart because there were some penalties in there. The restart lap 71, the 5 is leading, and Jonathan tells him go as much as you can, but save fuel when you're stuck, when you feel stuck. So if he wants me to go head up, into the pack a little bit if you can, but if you kind of like someplace you can't get to, go ahead and save fuel. Early on, they're 3 wide middle at lap 72. I hear top of 3, and they're 3x3. So lap 74, top lane starting to move up to 7th. At lap 78, the 22 is leading that high lane, and the top 8 are cleared of the second lane. So that's kind of good because you don't feel the danger of that second lane hitting you. I
think I said at that point, like, this is where Ryan's, and I know some of it's fuel save, and some of the people that are on the outside lane often aren't. They're trying to make it to the front, but he dices through the field here from that 24th starting position on that restart and goes all the way, straight into the top 10. And I'm like, again, this is why you don't need to be worried about it when it comes to Ryan Blaney. He can, even in this next gen era, go from the back to the front without too much of a problem, just because of the skill set that he has. So that was cool to see. Made me feel a little bit better for the rest of the race.
Yeah, lap 83, the lower lane coming up a bit, led by the 38, but Ryan's P8. Lap 87, Tim says the 2 car would like it to work his way up there, and Ryan just kind of laughs. I don't think there's any possible way. The way they were running, they were just too tight, first off. Secondly, I think it was something in reference to what happened at the end of the pit cycle in stage 1, where he couldn't catch up with those guys, and they wouldn't wait for him. So, but Ryan's up to 10th at this point. At lap 91, Jonathan is about 20 till the pit stop. So they're kind of notifying, like, it stays green here, how we're going to do it. At lap 95, both lanes are still pretty equal. He's up to 13th here. At lap 99, Jonathan's trying to put together a plan to not pit with the 51 because they pit in front of the 51, so they don't want to have to come around the 51. The 38 is leading the high lane. The 19 is leading the low lane here. Ryan's up to 14th at lap 103. He says, we're either going to have to come around the 51 under green or pit with others. Ryan just kind of wants to know what should we do. And at lap 104, Jonathan says, 5 away, same plan as car ahead of us, the 41. So now let's pay attention to the 41 in front of us. Are we in the earlier or later side of pitting? And Jonathan says, actually, we're kind of in the middle. Still in the high lane here. And, 107, Tim Sells will stay out. At lap 109, the 41 is coming in at lap 11. But at lap 111, he couldn't get down. The 8 was in the way. They couldn't get a hole here. At lap 113, the 9 does let Ryan in, actually. And he pits with that group. And he will have to come around. And at lap 115, they're pitting. Then they come out right behind the 5 and the 9. So this actually works out pretty good for him.
This is a great cycle. Honestly, I think I made a joke. I was like, let's just pit with the Hendrick cars every time. This doesn't work out okay.
Lap 117, he covers the high lane. He's being pushed by the 8. He's all the way up to 4th. And lap 118, we get pushing the 2 now. We're pushing the 2. And he tells him, tell Austin to stop lifting. It's hurting both of us. So Austin's trying to drag to make sure he gets his push, but Ryan's like, I'll give you your push. Just keep going, They're 3 wide in the middle here at lap 121. First 7 rows are 2 by 2 at that point. Ryan is in the low lane pushing the 2. They're somewhere between 3rd and 4th. It kind of goes back and forth here. The 8's leading the high lane. Lap 125, the 2 gets ahead, and he tries to cover both lanes, but then the 20 makes a new low lane. Now all of a sudden they're 3 wide, and at lap 130, Ryan makes the move on the 2 car and wins stage 2. He just something about running right behind somebody, and then he gets to the last lap and just makes his move, makes the push, makes him, whatever he's got to do to get around him, and he gets around him. Stage win.
Classic Ryan Blaney move there for sure. The racing there, I mean, this is where, I think I mentioned a couple of times that I thought this was a pretty great Daytona 500 overall, outside of like what I described as boring racing in the first part of the first stage. But this sequence after that pit stop all the way to the end, 2 lanes, 3 lanes, people were actually making moves, and then capped off by this, fantastic move by Ryan in the 12 car to get past his teammate. And I'm sure there's plenty of Blaney fans. I mean, again, Joey, Austin, they all work together pretty well. But there are times when we feel like they're not always, first to help Ryan when he needs it. So the way Austin's been in a couple of dual races and in some other situations, that Daytona 500 a couple of years ago, it was nice to see him shake the 2 car and steal that stage win. And more importantly, first playoff point of the season scored in the first race of the season. So let's start stockpiling those in mass if possible. Yeah,
let's win some stages, right? 4 tires going on the jack, waiting for the thing to be fueled here. There's about 30 cars on the lead lap at this point. You know what? They go in first and come out second. So not too bad there. Once again, everybody's doing the same thing. They have to take fuel.
One thing I'd mentioned that I noticed, I had a pretty good view of Ryan's pit box during this race, and the 1 car on these, stage brake cautions, when the full field's coming down, the 1 really hung his rear out. And I think part of it's because he was coming around Ryan most of the time to get into his box, but he was pitting shallow in the box, and with the rear just hanging out, and every time Ryan really had to maneuver out and around him, and it was unfortunate that had to happen. But again, I think that might be the reason why he came out second there, but it really didn't matter that much. So
that's something when we talked to Ryan Skip Flores, on that podcast that he brought up. There's hidden things on pit road sometimes that cost you time. That has nothing to do with pit crew or how you pitted the car. And that could be, you're right. He could have had to slide out around him a little bit, took an extra half a second, and the 2 cars, the car that beat him off pit road. So somebody who pitted right behind him. So time wise, that's all it takes sometimes, So on this restart here, the 2's taking the high lane. Ryan follows him in the high lane here to push him. The restart lap 136 and the 23 is the car leading the low lane. Lap 137, we're 3 wide. The 2 and the 12 are trying to cover both lanes. They're covering the high lane. Lap 139, the 23 tries blocking all the lanes. They're 3 wide. It's pretty dicey here. Ryan stays with the high lane, and this is the point where he starts to go backward a little bit. Now we're back to like 15th in that high lane. And then, lap 141, the 16 is leading. Lap 144, we're back to 21st.
I asked you this question. I said, was this a bailout? And you had a good explanation for it, but the racing up front was getting a little dicey for this point in the race. So I think twofold, it was good for him to start moving back, for whether it was that or other circumstances. But because I said early in the race, you could see he could go from the back to the front whenever he wanted to. So I was saying, no matter what the call is here and why they're moving back, I'm okay with it because I want him out of that chaos for sure.
Yeah. Here's what it really comes down to. And it's the same thing we've been talking about. It's fuel saving mode. They get, lap 147, he's 27th. At lap 155, he's 29th. Okay. And you're watching the in-car camera and it's like, is he close enough? Is he with guys? You're watching the timing and scoring. It's like, boy, he's over 2 seconds behind the lead at this point. Is he still with the pack? You look up on the regular TV feed and they're still at the back of that pack. But at lap 157, here's the communication that lets you know what they're doing. Ryan says, let me know when the windows is coming up so that I can make up the ground. So he knows that he physically can make up the ground with the car he has. And he knows that he wants to get closer to everybody once it's time to pit. And basically he's been saving fuel this whole time. So when he does pit, he doesn't have to be in there as long as other guys. So at lap 161, they go ahead and say, go ahead and start doing that. We're 3 wide. We're staying low. I think we're staying low on purpose here, even if we don't get a lot of positions, because we're going to go ahead and get down there where we can pit. Lap 169, Tim says the first wave will be within 10 laps to pit here. He says at lap 173, Johnson says 5 laps till the Toyotas, and we're going to be going a little bit longer. Lap 176, Tim says the 15 is pitting 2 rows in front of you, so be careful of that. At 178, the pitting begins. 179, we get a bunch of Toyotas. We're up to 11th now. At lap 180, we're pitting 3 seconds of fuel. So here we go. This is 3 seconds of fuel. And we get back out with the 14 pushing, the 22, the 6, and the 60 right ahead of us here. At lap 184, when they start to come together here, we're 9th. We went from the back of the pack to 9th. The 1's leading at this point. At lap 185, the 22 is leading the high lane. It's getting a little dicey now. Lap 187, we're top of 3. The 1's trying to cover all 3 lanes. And at lap 189, we got to push from the 19, top of 3, up to 6. Now we've pushed ourselves ahead. We're in around a bunch of guys now. Now we're in that first row or 2 of guys. We're all the way up to 6. Then at lap 191, 9 to go. We get this thing with the 24 getting pushed by the 48. Not being able to handle the push, because if you watch this replay and watch it over and over again, real speed, slow it down, whatever you want to do, there's no excuses. This push was pretty square. Even though it was in the turn, it was pretty square. And he just gets squirrely and hooks a left, and there's no reason to hook a left because there's nobody in front of him. So it's not like the push was so much that he needed to find room to go somewhere. He had room to go somewhere. Ryan, on the other hand, is on the outside, up above, past those 2 guys at that point, and he goes left. He right rears the 6 car this time instead of Ryan, shooting that 6 car all the way across the track right into Ryan, and ending who knows? Like you said, you don't know what's going to be the finish. You don't know if this other caution happens later on, doesn't happen later on. But boy, oh boy, when Ryan can get to the front during these type of things, that he can do something with it once he's there. So, they brought it to the pits. It was leaking water out of it. So they shut it off right away once they got to the pits, and ends up being a 30th place finish with that. And there's one more, after a restart, and I put the 7 car audio and visual on also for the ending, and watching that. the 2 and the 7 banging banging into the 1 and causing that caution. Basically, they got to the white flag lap, so there was no overtime, and then the 24 wins. Yay!
That's what I said. I thought overall the racing was great. They didn't tear up a ton of cars until right at the end. The race went super fast. I thought, it's just seemed like before I knew it, it was already lap 99. We're always already almost getting to halfway, and everything was going smooth. There's a little bit chaos with some pit stop stuff, but you saw Ryan go from the back to the front multiple times. He finally puts himself in position. You need to be in those first 2 or 3 rows to really have a shot at the win. In the closing laps, we were getting there. I was feeling pretty good about things, but you just never know what's going to happen. And the crowd, the crowd wasn't sure too. So there wasn't, I think we were kind of robbed of that moment of someone crossing the finish line at the checker and people, even if you're not a fan of William Byron, still being excited about, seeing a dramatic finish or something like that. But it was just kind of, nobody knew what was going on. Was the caution thrown before the white flag? Was it thrown after? Who's the winner? They did seem to announce relatively quickly that the 24 had indeed won. So, your reaction, yay, yeah, that's fine. Looking at the Jeff Gluck poll earlier today, I think it was in the high 70s or something. I'm not sure where it ended up toward the end of the day, but I'm like, yeah, that's about right. I feel like if we got like an actual finish that didn't end under those circumstances, it probably would have been a little bit higher. But I will say, we say that the 24 can't handle a push. I will point out, this is his second win at Daytona. I think he's got 2 wins on the new configuration at Atlanta. He knows what he's doing on super speedways too. I won't say he's an elite talent on them just yet because some things fell his way in some of those races. But he's not an elite, super speedway driver like Ryan, in my opinion. But he's good enough to put himself in position to. He just has caused a couple of unfortunate incidents, especially this week specifically.
What is it about guys, especially at super speedways, who cause the accident but don't end up in the accident? Now Ryan did it last year at Talladega, the first Talladega with Bubba and the triple block. And he's spinning guys out and so forth, but. What is it? It's better to be the guy, I guess, causing it than the guy in it, right? I guess that's part of it.
Yeah.
You can control where you're going because if you look at an in-car camera of what happened, he just shoots by everybody as it happens. This guy, we'll just watch him go by and then we'll just keep going. So that's the part that's frustrating. And then you get interviews afterward with guys like Bowman who are like, "Oh, what happened? Oh, I didn't know. Did I do that?
Yeah.
Did I do that? Was that me? It's like." What am I looking at? What am I listening to here? So when you hear guys saying stuff like that, Ryan was like a lot different than his Thursday night interview, which was nice. For the people who were worried about Ryan, if you watch the interview, they kept showing on TV, they kept doing this thing on TV, his wrist and look at him with his wrist. And but then when he gets done with the interview, he grabs a huge bottle of the Body Armor water with his right hand and just drinks out of it, doesn't wince, doesn't go, "Oh, that hurts," to do that. Just so I don't think there's anything wrong with his wrist. I think more than anything else, he was surprised that he had it caught there for a second, but he got it out of there before it would actually, broke anything. So I think he'll be more than ready to go this weekend.
Yeah, and he was checked and released from the care center pretty swiftly. So, but yeah, I did just see some traffic on social media while standing in the stand saying, "Oh, he might be hurt." They're showing the in car, and obviously you're going to be concerned. He's the second hard hit he took this week at that track, so it wasn't nearly as hard as that one that he took in the dual race. Which, man, that was rough. He took took a similar shot in the summer race at Daytona last year too. So you just hate to see it. 2 torn up race cars. That are out of the inventory, probably at least for now at Team Penske. So it's not going to affect their Atlanta cars at all, but it could affect some production down the line a little bit. But they're a big enough team, not too worried about it. Unfortunate ending. Exciting racing once again. Both races, Ryan puts himself in position as he always does, and sometimes it goes your way, sometimes it doesn't. It seems like he did win. He did win the July or the summer race at Daytona a few years ago, so it's not like he doesn't win at Daytona. Something about Talladega, though. I mean, he's made it. He has the 3 wins at Talladega, but he's also crashed out there plenty of times and such. You just want to see at some point in your career, especially with him. He's got this championship now. He's won the Coca-Cola 600. It'd be great for him to pick up a Daytona 500. I think that locks you for Hall of Fame right there if he gets one more puzzle piece like that. So
keep collecting the crown jewels.
So, but that's it. I mean, I can't even say I don't even. Parts of the week were exciting. The rain kind of slowed things down. Thankfully, Mother Nature on Monday gave us what ended up being a beautiful day of racing. I joked to you, like, we didn't really mention the Xfinity race or the truck race too much, and I think that's intentional because, man, those were complete disasters. Though I did just see that the truck race, they put its TV ratings out and had its highest rating since 2021. So kudos to them. I think a lot of that was just NASCAR fans getting excited to watch some racing, and there's probably going to be a little bit of that Netflix bump too, which I'm really interested to see what these Monday ratings were. And there's a few articles out there saying that there's a chance that this Monday race, because of the holiday, could still have a monster number. So we're going to have to see. Maybe even when people are listening to this, maybe the number's already out, a preliminary figure or something. But I'm hoping that they get some sort of momentum going forward. And we're going to talk about Atlanta at some point. But so far, the weather for Atlanta looks great, unless things change over the next couple of days. So maybe they can keep this momentum going, get this Netflix bump that hopefully is occurring, and keep moving the sport forward in a positive direction. So where does Ryan finish officially? I don't even. It's kind of funny. Like I had him I don't even know.
I had him at 30th. I thought that's what I saw.
Okay, so let's take a look at the point standings. It's worth noting that Ryan did pick up that stage victory, get those 10 bonus points and the playoff point to go. So currently in the NASCAR Cup Series point standings, Ryan is in the 23rd position, 37 points back of the leader, which is going to be the winner of the Daytona 500, William Byron. So the top 10 in points as of now: Corey LaJoie in 10th, then Eric Jones in 9th, Kyle Busch in 8th, Kyle Larson 7th, John Hunter Nemechek in 6th, Bubba Wallace in 5th, Chase Elliott 4th, Christopher Bell 3rd, Alex Bowman 2nd, William Byron again is leading the way. So extremely early in the season, only one race down. I mentioned to you, if we didn't get that stage win, we would be in a little bit more of a worse predicament here, but plenty of time, 30 something more races to turn things around here. I think they're gonna be okay. Things aren't going to be okay though, Steve, involve the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League. So why don't we go ahead and switch over to a recap of our week in fantasy racing. I mentioned on this on the last show that the league is full up. 100 people are signed up for the league, but I will note I was a little disappointed. Only about 80 people out of the 100 set lineups for this first race. I gave that warning last week. If you don't set a lineup in these first 2 races, you're getting the boot, because I have lots of people messaging me asking how they can get into the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League. So we're going to take a look at that after this race in Atlanta. So anybody that has a 0 points there because they haven't set lineups, you're getting the boot, and I'm hoping to open up some of those positions to get some other fans involved, because you want to get in there because you want to have those bragging rights to beat an elite team like my team that finished 66th overall that's 66 out of 80, because again, I think only around 80 people set lineups this week. So that's how bad of a week I had. And let's see why that happened. I'm going to go through my starting lineup for Daytona. And these were all, so when it comes to super speedways, I'm a little all over the place. I pick people that you don't normally pick for a regular weekend. But I try to pick some guys that had success and some people that had some success in the dual races too. Michael McDowell, former Daytona 500 champion, I picked him. He got me a whopping 1 point. Tyler Reddick, I picked him. He won one of the dual races, got me 14. Austin Cindric got me 24 points. Eric Jones got me 29 points. He was my high point getter for me. Justin Haley, who was up front at different points in this race, unfortunately only got me 11 points. And this was a mistake. Honestly, watching the race, I wasn't even thinking about fantasy lineups, and because I just knew how I wasn't going to bother changing anything, because who knows what happens in that last stage. Left Kyle Busch in the garage, and I left 37 points on the table because of that. So that's unfortunate. I easily could have swapped Kyle Busch and Michael McDowell, who was sometimes on all 8 cylinders, sometimes on 7. They said he has having mechanical and battery and alternator problems. If I was smart enough, I would have swapped those two and gained myself 36 more points. That didn't happen. Featured matchups. I picked Joey Logano over Ty Gibbs. That was wrong. I picked McDowell over Stenhouse. That was wrong. I picked Reddick over Chastain. That was wrong. Only one of the ones I got right. Zane Smith over Josh Berry. I was 1 for 4 in the featured matchups. So I only ended up with 89 total points. Good enough for 66th in the league. How'd you fare in your first outing at fantasy racing in 2024?
I had the same picks as you did for the matchups. That's wild. I had the same picks the same way you did. So I only got 1 out of those possible 40 points. I only got 10 out of them.
I absolutely 100% picked Zane Smith over Josh Berry because Josh Williams is on the spotter stand for.
That's it. That's exactly why I did that.
At a super speedway.
Yeah. I had Ryan and I had Joey on the lineup. I had Denny Hamlin, Keselowski, and Bubba Wallace. All great super speedway guys. I had Christopher Bell in the garage, which once again, if I could have, but the thing is, you got to swap out before the end of stage 2 to make any kind of swap. And all my guys had their problems in stage 2. Ryan, Joey, and Brad all being involved in the melee there. So Bubba was actually my top point getter because he had a couple good stages. He finished 8th and 7th, and then 5th overall in the race. So he was my top point guy at 39 points. But otherwise, not so good. 54th overall with 97 points. So, I got a lot of ground to make up already, as you're going to read here in a second with the top 10. Yeah,
so you're still beating me. Again, I was 66th. You're 54th. Let's take a look at our top 10, which actually starts with a tie for the 9th position with Ash Baby. That's a new name. And Stellanarius, our friend over there, 150 points total, tied for 9th. 8th, Pocono Lady with 153. 7th is Montana 12 Fan, 157. In 6th, we have Patrick Brown with 160. In a tie for 4th, we have Factory of Sadness 6, who dominated a lot of the season last year. And Pandamanda with 165. Both of those are tied. Math Mom 4, 3rd with 166. Joe Lopez 173. Those are a lot of folks that did really well last season, so I'm not surprised that they're kicking off the year doing really well. First position, I think another new name here, Al 12 Fan, 182 points to lead the way in the overall standings of the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League after the Daytona 500. And we'll pick up with this again next week. But now it's time to talk about this upcoming race, the second super speedway style race in a row for the NASCAR Cup Series to kick off the 2024 season as the series heads to Atlanta Motor Speedway. I don't even want to say, can't really even say the newly reconfigured because this is year 3 of this configuration where they've tried to turn it into a mini super speedway, Talladega, Daytona type track. Things are Friday night. There's some practice qualifying, or there's some qualifying, I should say, for the Xfinity and Truck Series. But Saturday, we have a doubleheader day with the Xfinity and Truck Series. But at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, you have the NASCAR Cup Series single lap qualifying on FS1. So if you want to tune in for that, you'll be able to see what the lineup will be for Sunday. 2 p.m. Eastern time, you have the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, Freight 208 on FS1. 5 p.m. Eastern time, you have the NASCAR Xfinity Series, Raptor King of Tough 250, also on FS1. So if you're going to be at the track, you have a full day of action on track, starting at 11:30 a.m. all the way till the green flag flies for the Xfinity Series at 5 p.m. Then on Sunday, February 25th, 3 p.m. Eastern time, the NASCAR Cup Series and Better Health 400 on Fox. So Atlanta Motor Speedway, pretty decent track for Ryan Blaney. I'll give you his overall stats at Atlanta. But again, starting in 2022, the track changed completely. So at Atlanta, he has 11 starts, 1 win, 4 top 5s, 6 top 10s, no DNFs, and an average finish of 11.4. But if you want to look at these last 4 races on this configuration, 17th, 5th, 7th, and 9th. And you pointed out to me earlier, Steve, as a reminder, that that 9th place finish actually came in the rain-shortened race. there in July of last year that, had a pretty decent run going there, but didn't have the chance to capitalize on actually finishing out that race. So he averages about a 9.5 finish on the new configuration at Atlanta. Obviously, he's great drafting track driver, and I'm hoping that they can take some of the momentum that they had at Daytona while they were on track, while they were leading laps, while they were running up front, and move that over to Atlanta this weekend.
So you're going to the race, right?
I'm going right now. Like I said, the weather's clear, so don't blame me if it rains.
Right. And I'm thinking I got to make sure you have a Venmo because there might be some new merch this weekend.
That's true. Yeah. There's been a lot of people. They took a peek at that entry list. And what's the sponsor for this weekend?
We've got Body Armor, Zero Sugar on the car this weekend.
Yeah. So that means a new paint scheme.
New paint scheme coming at you. And last year when they did this, they did it, 2 different times. They've had merch ready to go. So we're knocking on wood right here, but I'm thinking that it worked so well last year that when they announced this paint scheme this week, when they show it to the media or however they're going to do it, or show them putting it in the hauler or however they're going to do it, hurry up and get your hats and t-shirts. And, if you're at the track, hopefully they'll have it at the track too. Actually, I'll have to text somebody, see if it's going to be on that hauler. I might know somebody. Wait a minute.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, you're right. I know. I mean, Atlanta last year, I walked away with a new Body Armor Sport Water shirt and die cast, and they did the same thing for the Coca-Cola 600 weekend. And I mean, I have to think that was successful, from being at least the Atlanta race. And I know you were down there for Coke 600 weekend. Mm-hmm. Already, just from people buying at the track, there was already tons of people wearing the merch, wearing the hats, walking around with the die casts. Like Body Armor, Ryan has run a lot of great paint schemes over the years. PPG and some other ones come to mind, but the Body Armor cars are always like the most innovative cars that he runs. They're always doing something cool. They have different product lines, from the water to the zero sugar. Now they have what's it called? The one that has the caffeine in it.
Yeah, the caffeine's the Edge, Body Armor Edge.
Then
they've got the IV ones now too, which are the pure replenishment types. So yeah, they've got all these different types of products. The zero sugar, there's 4 flavors: orange fruit punch, cherry lime, and lemon lime. And it's a zero sugar, so you're looking at it. There's no calories there, but a pretty good taste, for a zero sugar drink. I love them. I had one for dinner.
So I mentioned, Atlanta Motor Speedway. I mentioned Ryan's stats, but let's take a look at the drivers that have won the races on this new configuration since it debuted in March of 2022. And the Daytona 500 champion from this year, William Byron, has picked up 2 of those wins. He won the inaugural race on the new configuration, and he won the summer race there in July of last year. In between, Chase Elliott and Joey Logano picked up those victories. We just talked about fantasy racing a little bit, so I think we can kind of merge both of those topics. Who, aside from Brian Blaney and probably William Byron, somebody you're going to want on your fantasy team, who else are you looking at this weekend that might make some noise?
Corey LaJoie has always looked good here since they've reconfigured the track, and obviously he looked good this past weekend, finishing 4th. So Corey's was one that you're not going to pick every week, but this might be a week to have him, or at least have him in the garage ready to go. Bubba Wallace again started the year off really good, and he's got momentum, so he's very, very good at this type of stuff. So what's interesting is it's super speedway racing. They do get bunched up, but it's 1.5 miles, and it's not as wide as the other 2 super speedways. So you're probably not going to see 3 wide. It's going to be a little harder to do fuel save mode, although I'm sure they'll try. And it could be a couple different guys. Really, really be interesting once again to see how it shakes out, Ford versus Toyota versus Chevy when it comes to drafting too.
Listen to this top 10. Now, again, this was a rain-shortened race that was kind of weird. Listen to this top 10 from July of last year. William Byron wins. Daniel Suarez in 2nd. AJ Allmendinger in 3rd. Michael McDowell in 4th. Kyle Busch 5th. Brad Keselowski 6th. JJ Yaley in 7th. Justin Haley in 8th. Blaney in 9th, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in 10th. So there's some drafting track guys in there, definitely with McDowell and Blaney and Keselowski, Haley, even and Stenhouse Jr. But yeah, there's a couple surprises that were within that top 10.
What car was JJ driving?
He was in the 15.
Okay.
For Rick Ware. So
Rick Ware, that's really good. That's a great finish for them.
So really interesting top 10 again. That race was cut short. They just got 185 laps in. So, but it's just an interesting thing to look at. So again, if you want to tune in for this race weekend, action kicks off on Saturday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time for the NASCAR Cup Series when they have single lap qualifying on FS1, and then the main race 3 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday, February 25th, the NASCAR Cup Series and Better Health 400 on Fox. Well, Steve, I think that pretty much wraps up this episode of the Team Blaney podcast. Again, the first points paying episode of 2024. So if you want to listen to us every week, that's a little bit of what you get. We try to give you as much kind of inside information that we can possibly get, but also just, we're really paying attention to the fine details of the race, the nuances, the strategies. We try to explain some of that stuff to you, especially when TV or radio doesn't give that to you, because you might question, why are they doing this? Why did they do that? What happened with this stop? Why was it fast? Why was it slow? We try to be the guys that come in on a Monday or Tuesday in this case and wrap all of that up, package it together, and get it out to you. So maybe you can understand a little bit more about what goes on with the 12 team from week to week. So I want to thank you everyone for tuning in to this episode of the Team Blaney podcast. You can interact with us on Facebook and X at Team Blaney and on Instagram and TikTok at team.blaney. We also like to encourage you to support the Ryan Blaney Family Foundation. Ryan's official charitable organization benefits brain health causes like UPMC Sports Medicine and the Alzheimer's Association. To learn more, visit RyanBlaneyFamilyFoundation.org or follow them on Facebook, X, and Instagram. So, for my co-host Steve Mez, I'm Adam Rogers. We'll catch you next time on the Team Blaney podcast.
Thank Brussels. Good night up there in the Netherlands. Check us out on the TikTok.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.